All right, hear ye, hear ye, hear ye, and welcome to the fortnightly Backdrop Community Meeting. We can start off with a round of introductions, and I'll go first. My name is Luke McCormick. I'm a web project manager in San Ramon, California, which is near San Francisco. I'm commonly called Cell Ear on the nets on those places where one doesn't use one's real name. Let's go to Robert.
I'm Robert Lang. That's the bug folder on the internet. I'm in Altadena, California. Go to Martin.
Hi, I'm Martin. I'm a web developer in Northeast England, United Kingdom. And I'm Yorkshire Pudding on the internet.
I'll jump in. I'm Tim Erickson, St. Paul Tim on the internet. I'm in Deerwood, Minnesota. And since everybody else is brief, I'll leave it at that. Jen, you want to go next?
Sure. Jen joining from Oakland, California. That's it for me, I guess. Joseph, do you want to choose yourself?
Hi, I'm Joseph. I'm a developer from Las Vegas, Nevada, and I am a core committer as well. And I think
Thank you.
Sarvashri's the last person.
Yeah, I think that's everybody, right?
Obviously.
Oh, Sarvashri, sorry, you don't have a image up, which is fine. Are you there? Sarvashri, if you're talking, we're not hearing you. Yeah, let us know if you figure out the issues. If you're there, I know he like signed up and left and came back, so he might be having technical issues. This is, as Luke mentioned, I think our third community meeting. These community meetings are just sort of meant to be discussions about topics in the community and projects, demos, even case studies. For today's topic, some of us were thinking that it's the end of the year. We were thinking about topics we wanted to talk about next year and thought about sort of a bit of a retrospective on the previous year, summarizing some of the things we've accomplished and have happened this year, while thinking about some topics that we would want to talk about as we move into the new year. For those who are participating live in the call, the agenda we brainstormed some things to get us started yesterday, and they're in the agenda that is in Zulip. Actually, we should probably put that in the Zoom chat as well. Excuse me. So I'm looking at this sort of list of ideas already, and I to go ahead and start this. I mean, I wanted to start with core, but I'm going to need some help there. Maybe we can brainstorm. The entity registration in core was the first thing that popped to my mind, just in sort of core technical development. This is something that's been in the work for a really long time, and we finally got that into core. I had hoped to do a little bit of research and kind of browse through the change logs or the announcements to see what other major things we added to core in the last year. Can anybody remember any off the top of their head? I'm actually zooming to your favorite things are in core this year.
Do you mean entity registration or entity reference?
Did I say registration? I meant entity reference. Entity reference. Entity registration is not in core. So, and I don't think we have the time to go into the details on that for those who aren't familiar, but it's been kind of we have a couple of different registration modules out there, and we sort of settled on one, and we got that into core. Other favorite things that got into core this year.
HTML5 date widget.
HTML5 date. Can you remind us quick what that does?
It just provides a more user-friendly mobile native interface when you're adding dates, either to nodes or in a web form. You can on a mobile, it just uses the mobile interface rather than having to rely on what's in the thing. So it's a much more modern experience and much more user-friendly experience. So that was quite a good one. That was in 1.23.
I shared my screen, and so we do 3 releases a year. So this year's releases would have been 1.21, 1.22, and 1.23. This is the release notes for 1.22, and I almost forgot about the really big one that was sort of just one of the most obvious changes to Core.
I was going to mention that.
Are the new cards on the front page, which have been in now almost a year already. Can you believe that? And another thing that I really liked in the 1.22 release was the little thing in the admin bar that shows what page you're on, or like what layout is being used for the page you're on, what theme is being used, things like that. We had some improvements to the book module. Anything else? Let's glance at 1.23.
I think that enabling of backdrop only modules was a really good one. But I mean, it's sort of technical and obscure, but it saved people a lot of pain, I think. Upgraders who found things previously were simply disabled and not upgraded because modules were missing.
So just to refresh my memory, this is the automatically updating or enabling modules, core modules, or say a bit more about it, Robert.
Yeah, so this was if to do an upgrade from Drupal 7, if the backdrop module needed a module that existed only in backdrop, like Entity Plus, which I think was one of the ones that sort of triggered this. Then since that module didn't exist, it wasn't, even if you put it in the backdrop installation, it wasn't enabled. And, because it didn't come over from an enabled module. And so everything that depended on it was disabled. And so people would do their upgrade and then find that lots of stuff that depended on it, like UberCard, was not enabled, had been disabled and not upgraded. And so by making it so that required modules, if they existed, were automatically enabled, then that allowed the entire Drupal 7 to backdrop upgrade process to happen smoothly and transparently. So it made it so that things worked the way people expected, rather than surprising them with a bunch of incomplete work.
Okay. I was looking at the 1.22 release, which was from May. And so this is, the cards actually got in May, so they haven't been in quite a full year yet. This is the 1.21 release. Looks like we have things like a crop and anchor point for scale and crop anchor point for scale and crop image effect. CSS classes on regional layouts, a negate option for visibility condition on roles, number of interesting little things. Probably nothing is quite as visible or major as the entity reference in Core. Let's look quickly at 1.23. I'm going to try to put a blog post together that sort of the 1.23 was our most recent release back in September. And that is the one that had entity reference in Core. We also allowed comments to be hidden. That's when we added the HTML5 date widget that Martin was talking about in a taxonomy term depth of field. So, okay. Anybody have any other Core developments that from this year? Or any Core features you're really looking forward to next year? that people are working on. I think the big one in the queue that seems to be making some headway is, for me, is the field groups functionality in core. That we were pretty close to that for this release. So that's something I hope we can look forward to next year.
Oh, that's big.
Yep. Going back, well, I'm gonna quit sharing my screen for a minute. One of the in terms of the community, some of the community things that have been that we've accomplished this year was one, transitioning to this community meeting from our old outreach meeting. We've set up a marketing committee, which Luke is chair of. Luke, do you want to say something about the new marketing committee and how that's been going?
Yeah, I mean, just super briefly, we're rolling stuff out. Everyone who's involved has been slowly expanding things where started off sort of shyly in a private corner and now basically public and ready to continue on in that realm. Looking forward, I don't know if it's pre-announcing, we've been talking about the first initiative, which I can say I'm hoping to launch early in January at our next community meeting.
Okay.
I can talk about it further. I just don't know if it's fully out yet.
Well, you could probably give us a quick high level, just what it is without getting into the details right now.
Yeah, it's an initiative designed to make it easier for people to hire somebody to help them port their Drupal 7 site to Backdrop.
Okay, great. Sarvashri's just letting us know he's having some technical troubles, so in Slack. So great. Any other comments on that? Let's talk a little bit about Contrib. Some of the major highlights in Contrib. I did a quick scan and saw that we released 112, roughly. This give me a leeway of one or two, roughly 112 Contrib modules this year. For Backdrop CMS. Many of those are ports of Drupal 7 modules, some new ones. I think we've mentioned that in our discussions, one of the really big ones was organic groups. Alejandro did a lot of work on that, but I think organic groups was such a big milestone for me because it was sort of a module that didn't just emerge, but it was something we identified as a community that there was need for. And there was a lot of collaboration and discussion to get it released. It had been in the works for a long time. Is anybody here involved in that? One of the things we added was a sample content module. That was something I helped with, which was so that if you enable one of the difficulties if you've never used organic groups before is it's kind of a complicated module, and figuring out how to use it and having some sample content come with it really makes it easier to understand out of the box, which is something that the Drupal module didn't have. We added that. Anybody else have a favorite module that was released this year?
I'd just like to add that we passed the 1,000 Contrib project mark. That was kind of a big deal.
Ooh. Wow.
That is related, and that is, so we have about, last I looked, about 750 official released modules on backdrop.org, I think just modules. The 1,000 projects would include layouts, themes, and modules that are in the works, right? So, but that's still a huge milestone. One recent module that we probably should mention is the Happy New Year module. So that just came out about a week ago. So if you want to decorate your website to celebrate the new year, be sure to find the Happy New Year module. Anybody else? Well, I feel like I'm talking a lot. Other big developments this year. We've the things that we talked about in Zulip. Anybody want to bring any of those up or? I'm going to mention then that I think one of the really big, one of the exciting things of this year was the Stanford sites, the release of the Stanford sites earlier this year. I think that went back to like March now, so it's been almost a year now. But not only did Stanford University choose to migrate a couple of their very large, ambitious, and complex websites to Backdrop, but they have been on the speaking circuit, the Drupal camp circuit, talking about it and talking about their experience, explaining why they made the choice, how they did it, and encouraging other folks to look at Backdrop. And that has been a huge development. We haven't had like a major development shop like that with that big of a project out there talking about Backdrop. Luke also mentioned that Lullabot did their first Backdrop project this year. So we've had a couple of big agencies sort of join us. Anything else?
This isn't something that happened this year, but it's just kind of like something I'm looking forward to is how we can use the entity reference module now that it's in core, and we can depend on certain APIs being available.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I don't know how anybody's doing or what anybody's doing with this yet, but I'm just curious like how this is going to play out with building features that allow you to dynamically link things together.
Sure. So building on a development from this year, building on the fact that entity reference is in core, huh?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Certainly something to look forward to and talk about in future events. Robert, another big development that maybe you can mention something about. I know I've asked you to talk about this a few times. Is our CVCRM in backdropcms.org. This is something we've been talking about for a long time, and we've made progress this year. Can you give us the quick summary of what you did on that project?
Yeah, I mean, it's installed on core. I mean, on backdropcms.org. So we had a project, and it ended up creating a bunch of subtasks, and I guess most of those tasks are done. There's still a few loose ends, but it is on backdropcms.org. It's kind of integrated. People can sign. We collect CiviCRM data when people register to a new account. We collect their interest in various types of mailing lists. We moved the newsletter list of addresses is on CiviCRM, and future people wanting to get the newsletter do so by checking a checkbox in their user profile. So the next time we send out a newsletter, we'll do it by, I hope, by CiviMail to that mailing list group for the newsletter.
Right.
Security releases list is also part of CiviCRM, and so we should, next time we have need to send a security release email, it should use that list.
I think it's fair to say that we haven't made too much use of it yet, right? But we've got the pieces in place now that we can.
Yeah. Having some conversations with Luke about the best way to do some surveys, which CiviCRM supports. We don't have that module turned on, but it's literally checking a box and clicking save to turn it on. It's built, Civi Surveys built into CiviCRM. And I guess one of the missing pieces, which I have on my plate, is to do figure out how to sanitize the CiviCRM database to make it easier for developers to test flight on a local version of the site without exposing people's private information.
So I think our primary early uses for CiviCRM are going to be managing our newsletter, doing donations, and maybe some volunteer management stuff. and marketing, right? Luke is looking at it, how maybe we can make use of it for marketing.
Yeah, to do donations, we need a payment processor to be set up. Although we could route to take donations via PayPal now and direct. But if we wanted to do like credit card based donations, we'd have to set up a payment processor account for that. But that's all relatively straightforward to turn on in CiviCRM once the external things like the payment processor account and so forth are set up.
Right. Any questions or thoughts on CiviCRM on backdropcms.org?
I'm excited about it. It's part of the D7 migration pipeline project. I believe it's going to fit that, but just in general, I think surveys is a ripe area that we can get a lot of value out of.
Mm-hmm. I'm personally most looking forward to just being able to identify and sort of group volunteers, people who express an interest in helping us out. We've not done a great job at tracking people in terms of how they want to help us volunteer in the community, and then being able to sort of target communications at people that have expressed very specific interests. And we're still getting that set up and operational, but the pieces are all there now.
Yeah. Oh, there's a huge, market of potential people that would be interested and able to help.
We lost you, Luke, or did we lose me?
Wait, I think we might have. I'm still here.
I can still hear you, Luke.
All right. Can you see me?
I can hear both of you. Oh wait, now Tim's gone.
And Tim's frozen.
Yeah. Oh well. Anyway, what was I saying there? Just non-PHP, artists. If people that know CSS and HTML and various other things like that, QA, like there's all sorts of stuff that somebody can do. Who
I think it's worth. I think it's worth sort of celebrating the fact that we've started to have some contributions to the community from Africa, and Gogu has provided some great graphic design for our Backdrop Live promotions. So it's really good that we've had that input, and it's been really beneficial, and it's exciting that we're getting people from Africa interested as well.
Yeah, we also have a maintainer application from Kana Patrick, who's also from Africa. So it's nice to see that community found us.
Fantastic. I didn't know about that.
I'm curious, talking about using CiviCRM for surveys, and how does that compare? Because web form can be used for surveys, so I'm just curious as to what a survey in CiviCRM offers that web form doesn't.
Yeah.
Do we have web form installed on Backdrop CMS stuff? I didn't think we did. I looked for it. So
yeah, so let me preface this by saying what I'm about to say comes from reading the documentation rather than actually using.
Sure.
But basically, like web form, you can set up a form with questions on it. You can define your own questions and the type of data that you collect as answers. And it is created as a custom data field in CiviCRM. So at the highest level, you could do both. We could send out an email with a link to a web form, or we could send out an email with a link to a CiviCRM survey, which is basically a profile in CiviCRM. The difference in outcome, there's probably small differences in the details of your form and so forth, but the main difference in outcome is with web form, all your answers are collected in the backdrop database, as submission data. And so if you want to do, it depends on what you want to do with it. In CiviCRM, your answers are collected in the CiviCRM database, and they are tied to the contact record of the person who did the submission. So you can use CiviCRM's pretty powerful advanced search functionality to slice and dice answers, to like who checked this answer, and create a mailing list. I want to send a mailing, to all the people who checked a particular development system in, or a particular PHP version in the survey. Doing that would be much harder if the data was in web form, because you'd need to somehow build your list and do your slicing and dicing based on web form data, and then figure out what CiviCRM contacts corresponded to that user.
So I've been using WebForm and CiviCRM together. There's a fantastic WebForm CiviCRM module that means you don't need to create your forms in Civi, which is sort of a big pain compared to WebForm. But you can still map your submission data to records in Civi. So it sort of gives you the best of both worlds. It lets you build your form in web form. You can set up your, conditional fields, stuff that Civi doesn't really handle quite the same way. Your emails, all of that stuff the way you would normally do it. And then you have a special page that lets you map like this field in web form maps to this field in Civi. And then you can still use the Civi to like slice and dice your user data and get what you use. So I would recommend using both because both has things they're good at. And if you can get the data where you want it with the interface you want for building forms, it makes your life a lot easier. But yeah, it's going to be great for Tim, I think, being able to reach exactly the people he wants to reach. There's also a lot of neat integration with stuff like contributions. So if we wanted to track who made a contribution, we could do that through a web form and still have it mapped to Civi contributions. There's integration with events. So if we want to do like event registration with a web form, that could go to our Civi event system. There's just so much really nice integration between what you can do with a web form and the pieces of Civi where you want to track the data. So it's pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, the high level view is that a CRM is built for the purpose of allowing an organization to maintain a relationship with people out there and keep that going. And there's a lot to that. So like you could probably construct a CRM out of web form and like architect it yourself, but it's not going to be easier. Like there's a lot of questions that have been asked and answered. And so it's good to just kind of piggyback on that.
Okay.
I talked about web forms and CiviCRM long enough that Tim came back.
All right, I want to make sure I've been waiting for this, but I think actually one of perhaps the biggest thing in this last year, just to hyperbolicize it a little bit, it's kind of sort of subtle. Is I feel like we've reached détente with the Drupal community. That a year ago, we were the rogue outsiders, and we seem to have been welcomed back into the family, and it feels good. I'm very happy about that. I think there's lots of possibilities and lots of good things that come from that change.
Sure. The high point of that might have been when Dries sort of acknowledged and recognized Backdrop as part of the Drupal family back in August at Drupal Camp Colorado. Same day that Jen gave an interview, Dries and Jen were most special guests at Drupal Camp Colorado that day. Since then, we've had at least two meetings with representatives of the Drupal Association to sort of talk about our relationship. We've been sort of officially told that we're welcome at Backdrop at DrupalCon and to submit sessions. And lately, we're in discussions right now with them about sort of being listed on Drupal.org somewhere as an alternative to Drupal 10 for Drupal upgrades. So some real progress there.
It's fantastic.
Is anybody else? Irina Zaks, a member of the community who's not able to be here today, is sort of building on that and working on a soft landing initiative through working with the Drupal Association to help Drupal 7 site owners find a way forward, regardless of whether that be in Drupal or alternatives like Background. And hopefully we'll be hearing more about that in the weeks to come. So, anybody else have anything? I'm going to throw out, actually, Martin, if I can put you on the spot for office hours. Wilbur Ince restarted office hours, something that had happened in the past on a weekly basis in late 2021, but 2022, we had a full year where I think pretty much every Wednesday, all year, for the entire year, we had office hours. And Martin, you started a European the second version.
We started one during the day, so it's morning, sort of morning, mid-morning, depending on the time of the year for Europe. But it's evening for Australia, so in theory, it should be good for both of those time zones. We had a little bit from Australia in the early days, but mostly it's been UK and Europe. So it's sort of been rather quiet the last few weeks, but we'll see how it goes in the new year. But yeah, we've had sometimes it's just been looking at collaborative working around issues on particular contrib modules. Me and Indigo Zell have done quite a bit of work on B in that, but we've also had a few people who were looking for how to do stuff on Backdrop coming along and asking for help. So and I know we've had that on the evening, the later office hours as well. People coming along and asking how to do something that this is their first contact, and there's been quite a lot of informal, very positive feedback that there's just this informal slot that you can just come along and get support from a volunteer who knows the system. So I think it's definitely worthwhile.
Right.
Let me throw out, and shut me down if this is going rogue here. But we were talking about maintaining, customer communications and customer contacts and relationships. What do you guys think about a guest book for the office hours when somebody comes by, just being like, sign in here, and then we can sort of, keep them from forgetting about us.
That sounds like a great idea for a backed up CMS website.
Yes. It's interesting. I think it's one of the, actually, to me, it sort of ties back to Civi CRM, because like one of the things that we haven't been able to do very well in the past would be keep a list of people who are interested in office hours and send them reminders, right? We don't want to send out a full newsletter every time we do an office hour, but I think it would be helpful to be able to communicate directly with those that are interested. And this ties into your guest book, just in that's a way of getting people into that. Your guest book could be what gets people into the system in terms of getting updates on office hours and reminders.
I mean, when I've been on on office hours, which is a relatively small percentage of them, but I've seen people come in, be like, enthusiastic about the help they're receiving, and kind of make promises about stuff they're going to do, and I'm not sure what happens when they leave. Like you rely on them to remember to come back.
Right.
Might work, but it seems pretty sketchy. So you could probably do for some reminders.
I get the sense that a lot of people intend to come to office hours, but just never think about it at the right times.
Yeah, exactly.
And if we had a way to keep in touch with them, so.
I have meetings that conflict with that.
Okay. Well, you should get up early and go to the European ones. I'm pretty sure you don't have any meetings then.
The sun never sets on the Backdrop Empire.
Okay. I am skimming through my list, and we've touched on a lot of the highlights that we brainstormed. Does anybody else have anything? Somebody suggested, unfortunately, Jen left, and she might have been able to help me with this.
No,
We had a
she
few
did.
transitions. It would be a good. I hesitate to bring this up because I might not remember everybody. Well, I know I won't. But we did have some transitions and things like the PMC and core committers. The one, fortunately, Joseph's here. Joseph, I know you have been added to the core committer team in the last year. Jen, can you help me? What other? So we.
Laren
Laren
was added as a core committer. Joseph was added as a core committer.
Sure.
Jack stepped down from the PMC.
Mhm.
And I think there are some other nominations in the queue, maybe for next
Right.
year.
Those are probably the main. Also, Jeff Serendipity officially sort of stepped down as a core committer after
Yeah.
being a core committer for a really long time. We appreciate that, all the work he's put into that. So, yeah, well, I would say maybe to wrap up this meeting, what we could do is just talk a little bit about upcoming community meetings. So right now we have 3 topics in the queue. Luke put dibs on the first community meeting of next year to talk about the migration pipeline. So at that point, he'll be prepared, I hope, to share more details.
Mhm.
I haven't officially talked to Irina, but I think we should probably do a community meeting on the soft landing initiative that we're working on with the DA at some point. I'm not sure if we're quite ready for that yet or not. But the third one was that we have on our books right now is UberCart, which we could also say this was an accomplishment, something that happened this year. Was a member of the community, Steve Morehouse, really took some, a number of, UberCart has been just gradually developing. New submodules have come out. Robert's very involved in that, Robert. So you could just sort of update us on sort of the status of UberCart quick. But the thing I was mentioning was that we also came up with this website. There's some concern that a lot of the Drupal documentation for UberCart might be disappearing, and that we need to capture that, given that this is the primary commerce solution for Backdrop right now. So Steve Morehouse set up a website where we could start to capture that. And I think he basically pulled in all of, there used to be but can you say something? Robert, you probably know more about this than I do. What exactly did Steve do?
Well, he's copying the the documentation. There's a bunch of UberCart specific pages on Drupal.org, and he's copying those pages over to the new UberCart.dev site and making backdroppy edits along the way as he does, because there are some things that have changed.
Right.
Just go along with the backdroppy changes, stuff that's in config rather than the database.
Well,
I think we missed that as we were listing our accomplishments for 2022.
Yes.
UberCart.dev. That should have been on the list.
yes, it should have been. Yep.
Yeah.
But we're going to make up for it by, I think, having a session, a community meeting just about UberCart. And we can we'll be sure that Steve is there so he can talk about UberCart.dev. Robert is one of the the maintainers of the UberCart module. Hopefully we'll have at least Robert and or somebody else, one of the other maintainers there, who can talk a little bit about the status of UberCart, and maybe we could even do a quick demo for those who haven't used it. It is right now, I think, the primary e-commerce solution for Backdrop. So those are the three topics we have.
And with that, I want to throw out the organics groups things. Can we wrangle some sort of appearance from them?
Oh, I would bet we could. Alejandro Argipiano is the primary or maintainer, I think, for organic groups. And that might be another good topic for a community meeting. We can
Oh, so
try to
this
get
week-
him on the schedule.
This is just, we should invite them.
Yeah.
See what they say.
Yeah, both UberCart and organic groups are sort of is one of those larger modules that fill kind of very unique use cases that Luke, you've often referred to as sort of communities in their own for Drupal, right? That there are whole groups of people who depend on those particular modules
Oh, yeah.
for their websites, and we should build exposure for them. Increase awareness that I don't know that everybody's even aware that these modules are available.
Oh, yeah.
For back.
Well, I think there's a bunch of distributions that are themselves, independent, abandoned communities in the Drupal world, and a lot of those, like the majority of them, depend on UberCart. So they were abandoned largely because there wasn't, not UberCart, I'm sorry, organic groups, and they're abandoned because there wasn't an organic group solution, that they could go to, and like if there's now,
Sure.
start doing chest compressions on those distributions and those communities and see what we can find.
Very good. So I think we have the migration pipeline for the first community meeting. Robert, I'd like to get, you don't have to do this right now. Maybe for the second one, we could do UberCart because that's a little bit more solid. I need to talk to Irina about the soft landing one and see if and when that's something we're ready to do yet. And we could also get into discussions with Argipiano, try and get that on the schedule. Anybody else have any topic ideas for future?
Do you want to try to set a date now, or do you want to do that offline?
I'm proposing the second community meeting, which would be 4 weeks from now. So we just have to look at that date.
So today is the 22nd, so that would be 1, 2, 3, the 19th of January. Right?
Yep, the 5th would be the next one. That would be the pipeline, and then the 19th. Does that work for you?
I'll be gone then.
Oh,
That doesn't.
well, should we do it 2 weeks later? The February 2nd?
February 2nd would work for me.
Or earlier, if that's better.
No, well, the only day earlier would be the migration.
Oh, I'm sorry, never mind.
So that was the earliest available. The 19th was the earliest available community meeting. February 2nd would be the next. So let's tentatively put it down for February 2nd. We want to confirm with at least Steve, I think, that he can be there.
I think it'd be really good to get Alejandro there too. He's
Yeah.
one of the major contributors.
Okay. Well, hopefully we can get the three of you then to talk about UberCart. Okay, if that's it, let's wrap up this meeting. We got a few minutes before the development meeting starts. Thanks.
I want to, like on or offline, I was going to propose that we do just a tiny slice of backlog management like we just did for this whole thing with each community meeting. They would just put that as an agenda, like, so what else, what's going further?
Sure.
But-
Okay, everybody, see you at the next meeting. I'm going
Bye,
to stop the stream now.